तवगतामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि वनन्ति भूरिदा जनाः. Your words are like nectar and bring life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome to class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are in chapter 32. This is Visit to the Sinthi Brahmo Samaj. And we stopped last time towards the top of page 630. Sri Ramakrishna is speaking to some of the Brahmo devotees, and there's one sub-judge in particular that he's having a conversation with. And last time we finished with this question about, is not God then compassionate? So this issue comes up many times in the gospel, that Sri Ramakrishna takes issue with the idea that God is compassionate, because it gives the feeling that lack of intimacy, that if we have a relationship with God that is as close and intimate as a mother and a child, we will never think in terms of compassion. We'll think that the deeper type of love, compassion, has a little bit of a tinge of separation or superiority or pity, something like that. Otherwise, Sri Ramakrishna is very much in favor of being compassionate. Sometimes we can get that wrong opinion. So this is the question the sub-judge: is not God then compassionate? Because previously, Sri Ramakrishna said, why compassionate? Why, revered sir? He said, a man has children. Who will look after them and provide them with food? Their own father or a man from the village? So this is the context of that. Master, why should you think that? I just made a remark. He's explained this so many times that he's not going to go into it too much. What I mean to say is that God is our very own. We can exert force on him. With one's own people, one can even go so far as to say, you rascal, won't you give it to me? So this is really the emphasis, that we should have such an intimate connection, relationship with God, and to feel that there's an obligation and duty for God to look after us the way a mother will look after a small child, or a guardian for a helpless person. That it's not a question of compassion or anything. This is their obligation and duty. That God has created this world, and we're children of the Divine Mother. She has to look after. This attitude is what he wanted to see. To the sub-judge, let me ask you one thing. Are vanity and egotism the result of knowledge or ignorance? Now, this is also a very important point and very important aspect of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. And generally, if we think of what are the results of knowledge, the results of ignorance, or what do we gain through knowledge, or how does one attain to knowledge, we think in terms of intellectual things. Sri Ramakrishna won't think in those terms. He'll think in terms of pride and attachment and desire. And if we ask him, why is it that we don't have a deeper understanding of some of these subtler truths, he won't say that. We'll think about it a little more deeply. And purify the soul, purify the heart. If we rid ourselves of egotism, we rid ourselves of pride and the passions and everything, we'll be able to comprehend these things. So this is far more important. The other element of this is that when we talk about this ahankara, this idea of the ego, we have a philosophical way of looking at this, and a very practical way of looking at it, or we can say metaphysical way and a psychological way. That the philosophers can argue about the nature of this ahankara ego. Sankhya will say that it's one of the elements of the antakarana. There'll be different ways of understanding this. If we really look at Sri Ramakrishna, the way he understands these things, that it's more important to understand the ego in terms of pride. That he's not always looking at things from a philosophical point of view. Like this other big question of this Jagad Mithya. This Mithya, we always tend to think in terms of, is it illusory or is it real? As Ramakrishna talks about that sometimes, in fact, the only time that I can remember him using this term Mithya, except when referring to the doctrine of Advaita Vedanta, except for that, he says Shangshara Mithya. So this we can say is not a doctrine of whether the world is real or unreal, but is there any substance to it, not in a philosophical sense, but can it satisfy our longing and our desire? Is there something false about it in the sense of something, some vanity of the world? These are far more important for Sri Ramakrishna, in my understanding, than these philosophical concepts. What is the real status of this external universe? No. Does it tempt us? Do we put all of our longings and desire and everything? Do we place that on things of the world? Do we look to the world as something that can satisfy us, or do we see how much vanity there is in the world, how much selfishness? And this is to me a better understanding of mithya, according to the way Sri Ramakrishna looks at this question. Vastu, we have the same thing. Vastu, avastu. In the philosophical sense, is there some ultimate substance behind things, or is there some emptiness there? Is it just a projection and imaginary? The other meaning is there real substance as to moral substance or ethical substance to a person? Or is it worthless as opposed to non-existent? So this is, when we look at how Sri Ramakrishna treats this idea of ego, mostly it's a psychological doctrine for him. He'll accept the fact that it's based on some type of identification. That generally it's based on, for most people, identification with the body and the mind and senses, but this ego that's free from this lower desires and everything, this is a ripening process. It's not, does it exist or not exist? To what extent is this ego keeping us bound to the world and keeping us in a state of ignorance? So our vanity and egotism, see, it's just the way we can really just say pride, the result of ignorance. Egotism is of the nature of tamas. It is begotten by ignorance. Now, if he's talking about it as a philosophical category or something, he won't say that it's of the nature of tamas. Actually, the ego is the nature of any of the gunas. We can have a sattvic type of ego. So what he's saying is that this prideful ego is the result of tamas. So ahankara can equally be understood in terms of pride or in terms of this ego sense. So egotism, we can say pride is of the nature of tamas. It is begotten by ignorance. Now, again, philosophically, this ignorance is false identification, but from the more spiritual point of view, this ignorance is not knowing what the ultimate goal of life is and not knowing what can ultimately make us happy and what can free us from bondage. Ignorance is a type of bondage. Ego, this pride, is a type of bondage. On account of the barrier of ego, one does not see God. So this is that dark, lower ego. This is that prideful ego. Otherwise, Sri Ramakrishna won't say this. He'll say that this sattvic ego, that this is what will help us realize God. This ego that looks upon it as a child of God. This is that vidyamaya, ego. So this is all about this tamasic ego that is selfish and prideful and running after sense, pleasure, and enjoyment. This will be the main barrier. And then he quotes a line from a song: "All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. It is futile to be egotistic. Neither body nor wealth will last." So again, he's talking about pride. We're proud of our good health, of our beauty, our looks, and everything, and how much money we have, how much power we have over people. These things won't last. Even if we go through a whole lifetime, in the end, we leave everything behind when we give up this body. Once a drunkard was looking at the image of Durga. This is a very nice thing. At the sight of her decorations, he said, "Well, mother, however you may fix yourself up, after 2 or 3 days, they will drag you out and throw you in the Ganges." All that. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that there are many pujas in India where they'll make a new image each time, and at the end of the puja, they'll do this visarjan. They'll throw the clay image. It'll become one with Ganges again. So this is a very nice. Yeah. So I say to you all, you may be a judge or anybody else, but it is all for 2 days only. Therefore, you should give up vanity and pride. So it's this prideful ego. Otherwise, everybody has a sense of I. This is all the ego means. If we want a good definition of ego, it's what comes to mind when we use this word I. That however we think of ourselves, that this is our sense of I. This is the ego. This is even according to Western psychology, Freud and everything. This is the ego means the self-image. They're not talking about some structural thing. That is just the way we think of ourselves. So this ego that is so attached to the world, this ego that loves the power and enjoyment and pleasure and everything, this is a tremendous obstacle in spiritual life, and it keeps us bound to this body idea. That, of course, that who is it that owns things? Who is it that enjoys the pleasures of the world? It's got to be this self, this ego that's connected with this body, a very strong sense of body consciousness. The characteristics of sattva, rajas, and tamas are very different. Now, here again, we have the 3 gunas. We have a metaphysical doctrine and a psychological doctrine. Metaphysical doctrine will take us back to Sankhya, that everything is a combination of the 3 gunas, that they align themselves, they get into a state of kind of self-canceling each other out at the time of pralaya, and then they get disturbed. We can accept that, we can like it. It's one way of looking at things, but the psychological teaching of it is so helpful to us when we understand that it's different tendencies of the mind. And this is what he'll be talking about here. This will almost always be the emphasis that Sri Ramakrishna gives. So characteristics of sattva, rajas, and tamas. From this metaphysical point of view or cosmic point of view, we can say that a tamas is inertia, tamas is matter, that rajas will be some type of energy, and sattva will be some maybe mind or something like that. We can understand in those terms, but here psychological terms. He'll explain that the characteristics of sattva, rajas, and tamas are very different. Egotism, and again pride, egotism, sleep, gluttony, lust, anger, and the like are the traits of people with tamas. So whether we say that there's a real metaphysical element of tamas that causes this, or whether we just say now that we have a category of person that we can say is a tamasic person. We don't have to argue, is there some cosmic force behind all of these things, or how do we explain it? That we can explain it by some scholars and everything, but anyhow, this is one way of explaining personality types. And of course, everyone is a mixture. There are elements that we have that are sattvic, some rajasic, some tamasic. We all have aspects of all of these. Egotism, sleep, gluttony, lust, and anger and the like, are the traits of people with tamas. Men with rajas entangle themselves in many activities. So tamas and rajas are very similar. These are the things that drag us down. The main distinction is that tamasic things will all lead to some type of inertia, inactivity, indolence, laziness, just not wanting to do anything. While rajas will be all the things that will lead to excessive ambition and activity and restlessness, and so they're very much opposed to each other. When we get to satwa and tamas are very similar from an external point of view, that they both may be in activity. Sattvic person is perfectly calm and peaceful. The tamasic person is perfectly lazy and indifferent to everything. So Swamiji says that two opposites very often look alike. But on the scale, tamas is here, rajas is here, and then there's almost dividing line. Sattva is the real helper, is the one who will free us. So men with rajas entangle themselves in many activities. Such a man has clothes all spick and span. His house is immaculately clean. A portrait of the Queen. This is Queen Victoria. That, of course, they were under the British Raj at that time. A portrait of the Queen hangs on a wall in his drawing room. When he worships God, he wears a silk cloth. He has a string of Rudraksha beads around his neck, and in between the beads, he puts on a few gold ones. So display and a little bit of showing off and desire for other people to praise. All of these things will be part of this rajas. When someone comes to visit the worship hall in his house, he himself acts as a guide. After showing the hall, he says to the visitor, "Please come this way, sir." There are other things too. The floor of white marble and the Nat Mandir with its exquisite carvings. When he gives in charity, he makes a show of it. But a man endowed with satwa is quiet and peaceful. So far as dress is concerned, anything will do. He earns only enough money to give his stomach the simplest of food. He never flatters men to get money. His house is out of repair. He never worries about his children's clothing. See, this is Sattva and Tamas can look very much alike. Tamasic person can also be like that, but with a completely different reason for it. He never worries about his children's clothing. He does not hanker for name and fame. His worship, charity, and meditation are all done in secret. People do not know about them at all. See, Sri Ramakrishna himself was a perfect example of this is pure sattva, how humble he was and how simple he was in everything. He meditates inside his mosquito curtain. People think he doesn't sleep well at night, and for that reason, sleeps late in the morning. Sattva is the last step of the stairs. Next is the roof. So we always have this image. Ramakrishna uses it all the time of climbing the stairs or climbing the rungs of a ladder to the roof. So here we can also compare this to Rajya and Kundalini. There are many different ways of understanding it. Here it's according to these three gunas that we start out with this very basic type of identity with all the external things and with our desires and our passions and everything. This will be the Kundalini at the lower three lotuses, chakras. And Swamiji explains that the way to overcome tamas is with the rajas. Of course, Gita also says that, but he takes it very literally to get up and do something. Very tamasic people, they have to just do something. There was an incident where Swamiji, after coming back from the West, he met a young man who thought himself to be very sattvic, very mild and sweet-natured and wouldn't harm anybody or do anything. But Swamiji could see that there was nothing to it. They do very tamasic things. So Swamiji asked him, "Tell me, can you tell a lie?" And he said, "Oh, no, sir, I could never tell a lie." He said, "Then first learn to tell a lie. At least develop a little bit of ability to do something. Yeah, then transcend it." Not that he wanted him to be a liar or anything. And then one other time he said, "You'll be closer to God through playing football than through reading Gita." Yeah, especially this was his message, especially to the young people of India and India in general, because he felt that through centuries of foreign domination, they had lost this inner strength and this ability to stand on their own feet, and he wanted to see this rajas. Of course, rajas guided by satwa. See, they're all combinations. The worst is tamas guided by rajas. Then people will actually go out and murder people and do all sorts of. Otherwise, they simply stay home, don't do anything. They're completely lazy. Uh, Satwa with a little bit of rajas. This is what Swamiji felt was needed. This was Swamiji himself. He had that rajas. He had that tremendous willpower and ambition and inner strength and everything, but a purely sattvic mind. So this pure sattva, see, sometimes they talk about shuddha sattva. The sattva is still one of the three gunas. It's still this, in the Gita it explains there's still some type of ego sense with the sattvic I that feels that I am a good person, I'm a kind person, I'm a wise person. A little bit of that is there. That has to be transcended, but we have to develop sattva. There's no point in trying to transcend sattva when we haven't really developed it. If we're still trying to deal with these tamasic and rajasic tendencies within ourselves, we do it by trying to develop these sattvic qualities. And once we've become this sattvic in nature, then everything becomes easy in spiritual life. So Thakur says that this will be the final rung. We won't get to the roof that way, but we'll get to the very closest, the last step to get to the roof if we can develop this pure sattva. So sometimes I think we put the wrong emphasis on our spiritual life. We put so much emphasis on spiritual practice and study and all of this, and then forget about this how to transform our inner character and mind. I remember years ago, Swami Prabhudanandaji, he gave a retreat here. He was head of our San Francisco Center, and he was talking about meditation. And he said, everyone likes to talk about what are the techniques of meditation, how do we do it, this and that. Nobody bothers about the nature of the mind that's trying to meditate. This is the most important thing. That mind has to be free from all sorts of selfishness and meanness and desires and passions and all of these things. If we want to be able to calm that mind, it's not a question of this abhyasa yoga. Yeah, we sit longer hours and everything. These things are helpful, but we have to transform the nature of the mind and the heart. We have to make it sattvic. So sattva is the last step of the stairs. Next is the roof. As soon as sattva is acquired, there is no further delay in attaining God. Now, Sri Ramakrishna uses the same terminology with regard to other things, vyakulata. As soon as we attain this tremendous longing for God, we'll have that vision. Sometimes he even says vishwasa, when we develop that absolute conviction that this is also almost one of the final stages. So this is another way of understanding it, that this transformation of character, so that we rid ourselves of all these lower passions and desires and meanness and selfishness and pride and anger, all of these things, then that mind can have some deeper type of understanding. That's a very sattvic ego. Not that we've eliminated the ego. We're trying to eliminate this tamasic and rajasic ego and develop this pure pure type of ego that can feel that now I can feel that I'm an instrument in the hands of God, that I'm a child of mother, that type of relationship, or that I see no difference between myself and the divine, or I see this I only as that eternal witness, as the sakshan. So there are different ways of having a sattvic ego, even. To the subjudge, didn't you say that all men were equal? So this goes back. See, there are several things that seem to be in vogue at that time. One, that everyone has the same amount of shakti. The other, all people are the same. Third, that God can't be partial to one, and that means that he's not impartial. He can't favor one over another. All of these things come up, and they're not very well thought out ideas that Sri Ramakrishna is always explaining. That, yeah, from the point of view of Atman, we're all one and the same. From the point of view of the jiva, that means that what is the evolution of the mind? That what is the nature of the mind according to the samskaras? That'll be different for everyone. And even those who attain some higher realization, there'll be a difference in the spiritual power. That some will develop such spirituality that they can raise somebody up just with a glance, like it's Ramakrishna. Others, he says, they'll be able to cross the ocean, but like a piece of driftwood. The bird sits on it, it'll sink. Others are like steamships. They can carry a huge number of people. So everyone is different that way. And he continues with this topic. There are still other classes and kinds of people. Now, again, people. So we're talking about a jiva. We're talking about the whole package. And this means mostly the nature of the mind, the individual mind, and character and personality. For instance, there are those who are eternally free. Eternally free. So that means that they will not take another birth on account of past karma, and for the sake of attaining liberation, that they're already free. These will be very special types of souls. Buddhist tradition, these are the bodhisattvas. These will be the Ishvara Kotis, avatars, those who have a special mission in life, that they're born just to do good to other people. No other reason for their birth. So there are those who are eternally free. That's number one. Those who have attained liberation, those struggling for liberation, and those entangled in the world. So we can pretty safely say that we belong to the third group. We're striving for something. Now, automatically, if we're striving for something, that means we haven't attained it. That means that there's some bondage there. So there's not such a sharp dividing line between all of these. There may be for the first two, but between those struggling for liberation and those entangled in the world, there's a big overlap. We're all struggling for liberation because we're entangled in the world, but we realize it. There's some so entangled in the world that they don't care. They don't never think about it, and they may enjoy it even. So many varieties of men. Sages like Narada and Shukadeva are eternally free. They are like a steamship, which not only crosses the ocean, but can carry big animals, even an elephant. Further, the soul that is eternally free is like the superintendent of an estate. After bringing one part of the estate under control, he goes to another. So that means that their birth is meant for the welfare of others. See how Sri Ramakrishna, how many times with his bad health and everything, he himself would go to visit these different places. What connection did he have with his Brahmo Samaj? He knew that there were sincere people among them. He knew that. And the others, he didn't care. There may be some among them who thought they just put up with him. They weren't very happy he was invited, but he's invited. Some admired him greatly. Some thought he was a bit of a madman, but there were always a handful. See, Vijay is here, Vijay Krishna Goswami. There'll be some that can fully appreciate him. Keshav could really appreciate Sri Ramakrishna. So he would go from place to place if he found that people weren't coming to him, and not for any selfish reason. He was born for that. The mother made it known to him that this is the purpose of his life. And this is what he said to Holy Mother. He said, you have to do something. You see these people in darkness, like insects, and the people of Calcutta. Yeah, do something to bring light to them. You're not born, he said, not, she used to say about him, not born just to eat rasagolas, that they have something to, mission to fulfill in life. Those struggling for liberation strive hard in soul to free themselves from the net of the world. One or two of them may get out of the net. They are called the liberated. The souls that are eternally free are like clever fish. They are never caught in the net. Now, very few can get out of this net. This is another distinction that we have between those who can actually have this God realization in this very lifetime and those who can attain liberation at the time of death. These are two, of course, not completely different things. Those who attain liberation, the Jivan Muktas, of course, they'll have this final liberation. But there'll be many who strive for it throughout their whole lifetime. They won't have samadhi, they won't have some ecstasy. Maybe they'll have some experience here and there, but at the time of death, that the whole life will bring them to that point where they can enter into that higher region at the end and not have to be born again. So if we say that this Jivan Mukti is a rare thing, Videha Mukti may not be a rare thing. The Thakur used to say, those who come to me, this is their last birth. So if we have that faith, then we won't think, if we haven't had some type of vision of God or some illumination, some very high thing, that we wasted our time. No, we'll get the fruits. So Holy Mother used to say, either you'll get it now or at the time of death. You want it really now, then you have to strive heart and soul. And those who do it can get it. Yeah. In our order, the monks of our order are so absolutely reticent about talking about any spiritual experiences that we don't know very much. I remember one nice story. Swami Swananandaji was with, I think it was Swami Madhavanandaji. I don't remember exactly. But somebody asked that question, that any of the monks of your order, have they had this samadhi? And he didn't answer. He kind of put it off. And then Swami Swananandaji, who was young, maybe still a brahmachari at that time, he said, Maharaj, if you people don't tell, then how will people know? So at least his conviction was that, yes, many of them had some type of realization. Yeah. Somebody was asking me about it the other day. If we're fortunate enough to see someone like Gopesh Maharaj, yeah. Earlier days, of course, Shantanandaji and Parmeshanandaji and others, those people have some real conviction, those who've lived with them. Yeah, Udeshanandaji, who lived with them, they'll have some real conviction. These are people of realization, somehow. But the souls that are entangled, involved in worldliness, never come to their senses. Now, no one should feel bad about this. I don't think any of us belong to this class. Yeah. This will really be those who just, if you talk to them about anything spiritual, they'll just laugh. That they can't imagine anything higher than just enjoyment in life. This is really, he's talking about those, maybe we'll say the first human birth, something like that. They lie in the net. So this is that idea of the fish. He used to talk about the different fish there. They lie in the net, but are not even conscious that they are entangled. Yeah, Sri Ramakrishna used to say sometimes they'll burrow themselves into the mud at the bottom, thinking that so comfortable and everything, not knowing that they're still caught in the net. If you speak of God before them, they at once leave the place. They say, "Why God now? We shall think of him in the hour of death." But when they lie on their deathbeds, they say to their wives or children, "Why have you put so many wicks in the lamp? Use only one wick, otherwise too much oil will be burnt." While dying, they think of their wives and children and weep. "Alas, what will happen to them after my death?" Of course, there's a little bit of virtue to this. They're worried, but at the very moment of death, then the mind should be completely taken off of this world. The entangled souls repeat those very actions that make them suffer so much. Yeah, this is another very curious aspect of this human personality, the human psychology, that we do things that we know we shouldn't do. We do things that we know we'll regret later. We do things that will give us a little pleasure now, and then we'll suffer for them afterwards. And yet, after having that experience over and over again, we continue to do it. And then either we forget what the results were, or we don't care, or we're willing to put up with it. It's a very curious type of thing. While I was reading this before, I thought of a kind of a curious illustration. But there's a professional golfer. His name is John Daly. He, when he was young, he was one of the very best. He could have been really one of the greatest golfers, but he loved to drink beer and to stay up late at night and not practice. He had very bad habits. He was good enough he could still win. And at some point, he said, "Let me turn my life around." And he really got off of this addiction to drinking, to beer and everything. He lost a lot of weight. He was a big, fat man. He lost a lot of weight and everything, and started playing good golf. And then some years later, he started drinking again. So they asked him, and he said, "I realized I had more fun when I was a drunk." So if someone has that nature, Thakur is talking about people like that, then what can we do? This lifetime has to go with that type of suffering and what seems to be enjoyment and pleasure and everything. Yeah.
Is it like he didn't want to deal with his mind?
No, he was very honest. We have to respect his honesty. That once he had given up that, then what was the fun? That was the one thing that he got pleasure from. He liked
himself better when he was drunk.
He did. Yeah. This human psychology. Yeah, we have people like that also. They like themselves, or they feel more in tune with themselves when they're angry at somebody. Yeah, there are people who like to be angry. There are people who like to be depressed. Yeah. There are people who like to be in pain. We have masochists. Yeah. So these are all very deep-seated samskaras. It maybe a whole lifetime has to go that way. We don't know. Thakur was talking about these very extreme things. Most of us, we learn our lessons. But sometimes it takes a long time. And then, see, it's a balance. We enjoy a certain type of food, then we get indigestion. And we can't sleep the whole night. Then we think, it was worth it. The food was so good, it's worth it to put up with it. Because we forget how much we suffer. Then at the end of the night, we say, "I'll never do it again." Next morning, we change. We say, "Yeah." We forget how much we suffered because of it, and we do it again and again. Thakur was talking about the psychology of that type of person. We hope that we're not like that we learn our lessons. But some scholars are so strong that it's very hard to get out of it. This is why Thakur is categorizing them, that those who really can't get out of this in this lifetime belong to this lowest level, this abound Buddha Jiva. So he says they are like the camel which eats thorny bushes till the blood streams from its mouth, but still will not give them up. Yeah, he talks about this hog plum. The hog plum, uh, it uh, it has a very big inner shell, it's ati, like a mango, and uh, the hard outside. And he says if you eat it, you get colic, but it tastes good. So people eat it.
Awesome.
Yeah, what is it? Do you know?
Awesome. What is awesome?
Hog plum.
Well,
Yeah, I know the word in Kannada.
What is it?
There is one essay has written about this song.
Uh,
what does it look like?
Amla.
Amla?
like a little mango, maybe something like that. Anyhow, but the point is that people are willing to put up with these things because they get a little bit of pleasure. It has a little nice taste to it. Yeah, or like the camel, the leaves of this acacia tree, I think, they're very tasty, but you can't eat it without the thorns. They're so intertwined with them, so it doesn't mind that the gums are going to bleed because it likes the taste of it. This is it. Either we like enjoyment of the world so much that we're willing to suffer the after effects of it, or we learn. But there has to be some replacement. We have to be able to find joy in something higher. Otherwise, there's this kind of dryness in life. So the entangled souls repeat those very actions which make them suffer so much. They are like the camel, which eats thorny bushes till the blood streams from its mouth, but still will not give them up. Such a man may have lost his son and be stricken with grief, but still he will have children year after year. He may ruin himself by his daughter's marriage, but still he will go on having daughters every year. And he says, what can I do? It is just my luck. When he goes to a holy place, he doesn't have any time to think of God. He almost kills himself carrying bundles for his wife. Entering the temple, he is very eager to give his child the holy water to drink or make him roll on the floor. These are very good bound souls. Huh? This is some who will never enter a temple or care about family or anything, but still bound souls. But he has no time for his own devotions. These bound creatures slave for their masters to earn food for themselves and their families, and they earn money by lying, cheating, flattery. They laugh at those who think of God and meditate on Him and call them lunatics. So you see, he's still getting back at the sub-judge for saying, well, aren't people all the same? So you see how many different kinds of men there are. You said that all men were equal, but how many varieties of men there are. Some have more power and some less. So it is the Shakti, different of Shakti, he used to say. The entangled creatures attached to worldliness talk only of worldly things in the hour of death. What will it avail such men if they outwardly repeat the name of God, take a bath in the Ganges, or visit sacred places? So this is another one of Thakur's kind of pet ideas, that everything is a question of the mind, not these external things that we do. We can visit all of the holy places, bathe in the Ganges every day, repeat the name of God. If we're doing it mechanically without any love or devotion, it won't have much effect. If they cherish within themselves attachment to the world, it must show up at the hour of death. So, what comes at the hour of death is determined by what is the real longing of the heart. What is that which throughout the whole lifetime occupies the highest place within us? Is the thing that's nearest and dearest to us? It's a question of intensity. The question of intensity of that real love and devotion. This is why sometimes people seem to be very ordinary people, worldly people. We don't know the time of death. We can see that this tremendous devotion will come, and any attach they look like very attached people in the world. At the end, they don't care for anything in the world. Just lying on the deathbed, they know death is before them. Then they don't care for anything. So what goes on within a person's heart throughout a lifetime, hidden from other people may come up at the very end. I have another nice story. Some of you have heard this. There was a devotee of the Boston Center. She was actually from New York, disciple of Swami Nikhilanandaji, and she used to drive Swami Sarvagatanandaji every Sunday between Boston and Providence. I met her a couple of times. She was a very close friend of our Prabhupada Pranaji, and she shared a story. It was very, very nice. Maybe I asked her about how she came to Sri Ramakrishna and everything. And she said that when she was a young girl and of maybe a young woman, that she had an aunt that she happened to see. She was reading this Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And reading something on Swami. So this aunt, she happened to say, "Oh, I see you're reading this. You're interested in this Swami Vivekananda." He used to say Viva Kananda. Viva Kananda. That's how he was write his name. People knew him that way. And so this devotee, she said, "Oh, do you know about him?" And she said, "He stayed in our house." That her father was a preacher. And one night, Swamiji happened to stay in their house somewhere in Boston, something like that. But this aunt never became a devotee or anything. And that one night, she was a young girl when Swamiji stayed there. How much effect could he have had, influence could he have had on her life? On her deathbed, her final words were, "Viva, my life." She thought it meant Viva Kanda. That on her deathbed, this was the one thing that influence of that meeting as a small girl with Swamiji once in her life, how that stayed somehow within her heart, so that the final moment it came up at the end. So it's not always that we see a person sitting in the shrine hour after hour doing japa and everything. They may be thinking of other things also. So really that which has the deepest influence on us, which known or unknown, will come up at the end. I found it so interesting to hear that story. Yeah, really fantastic thing. So the entangled creatures, attached to worldliness, talk only of worldly things in the hour of death. What will it avail such men if they outwardly repeat the name of God, take a bath in the Ganges, or visit sacred places? If they cherish within themselves attachment to the world, it must show up at the hour of death. While dying, they rave nonsense. Perhaps they cry out in a delirium. Turmeric powder, seasoning, bay leaf. The singing parrot, when at ease, repeats the holy name of Radha and Krishna. But when it is seized by a cat, it utters its own natural sound. It squawks, caw, caw. It is said in the Gita that whatever one thinks in the hour of death, one becomes in the afterlife. King Bharata gave up his body, exclaiming, "Dear, dear." Not just exclaiming it, he became completely attached. He was living in this hermitage in the forest. One deer would come day after day, and it became a pet. And he would feed this deer and pet it and play with it, and becomes very attached to this deer. So this is why at the end, this is the thought that came to his mind. But one thing we have to remember, first of all, we don't have to literally take this born as a deer. We don't know exactly that. But it's not that if he's born as a deer, then he has to go through everything starting over again. Be born as a cow and as a cat and a dog and then go through all of that. The very next life he was born as a great sage. This is Jada. And so great, he remembered his past attachment and would refuse to speak so that he would not get attached to anything. When he did speak, it was words of great wisdom. But this is that point that King Bharata gave up his body, exclaiming, "Dear, dear," and was born as a deer in his next life. But if a man dies thinking of God, then he attains God. So this what we call videha mukti, this attainment of liberation at the end, this can be open to anybody. This God realization in this very lifetime or near vikalpa samadhi. These, of course, will be rare things. Not impossible things, but these will be comparatively rare things. But if a man dies thinking of God, then he attains God and he does not have to come back to the life of this world. A Brahmo devotee. Sir, suppose a man has thought of God at other times during his life, but at the time of his death forgets him. Would he, on that account, come back to this world of sorrow and suffering? Why should it be so? He has certainly thought of God sometime during his life. Now, the question is the fault is with the question. If someone has thought of God at other times during his life, then he will think of it at the end. This is the whole point of this. If someone has sincerely given his life to the thought of the divine, this will come up at the end. It's not a trick, and it's not a question of grace. This is a psychological fact that at the time of death, that the mind will automatically go and be pulled like a magnet to what is most important to the person. It's a very logical type of idea. Those who are greatly attached to wealth, of course, again, we don't know if this is true or not, but they'll be born as these yakshas and rakshasas and things, and they'll be like ghosts guarding over their wealth so that no one touches it and scare people away. We don't know if that really happens, but the point is that that'll be the thought at the end. So this is that question. Suppose a man has thought of God. Okay, so maybe he's saying just occasionally thinks of God. And he also, Thakur says, a man thinks of God, no doubt, but he has no faith in him. There has to be faith behind it. There has to be some type of intensity. It has to be done with real love and devotion. There has to be it has to be some meaningful, significant thing. It can't be a superficial type of thing. That's why Thakur is always saying dive deep. Don't just float on the surface. It won't leave that imprint on the mind. So the time of death, the mind will go there. A man thinks of God, no doubt, but he has no faith in him. Again and again he forgets God and becomes attached to the world. It is like giving the elephant a bath. Afterwards, he covers his body with mud and dirt again. Then again, quoting from a song, the mind is a mad elephant. But if you can make the elephant go into the stable immediately after bathing him, then he stays clean. Just so, if a man thinks of God in the hour of death, then his mind becomes pure and he gets no more opportunity to become attached to lust and gold. Man has no faith in God. That is the reason he suffers so much. Yeah, faith really means some type of deep conviction. Not just that God exists, but that God can be attained, or to have God in our lives is the most important thing, or that we can have some type of a higher realization, or that we want to experience something higher. It has to be something really tangible in our lives. We can say, no, I don't have absolute faith, conviction that I can have this highest realization, many of these things, but I have the conviction that this is what I want out of this lifetime. And that possibility is always open. So at least have that kind of faith. So, but man has no faith in God. That is the reason he suffers so much. They say that when you plunge into the holy waters of the Ganges, your sins perch on a tree on the bank. Yeah, people say that sins are dissolved, removed. Thakur says, no, they're just waiting there. They're waiting on the tree and the branch. No sooner do you come out of the water after the bath than the sins jump back on your shoulders. So we shouldn't think that we can rid ourselves, we can do whatever we want, lead a life of enjoyment and pleasure and striving for power and selfish type of life, and just do some ritualistic thing and dive into Ganges, then we're free from everything. Do whatever you like, but then at the end, just sprinkle some Ganges water and finished. It's a very nice way to put it. They're just waiting to jump back on your shoulders. All laugh. A man must prepare the way beforehand so that he may think of God in the hour of death. The way lies through constant practice. So, if we want to think of God at the very end, we have to remind ourselves at every moment not to forget God, or not to forget that divinity within. If we're lacking somehow in some deep conviction about these metaphysical things, then we can remember this Leela. We can think of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. For others, they can think of Krishna or Rama. The many devout Christians, of course, every moment they're thinking of with their Bible studies, the life of Christ, that this also will do the same thing. Thakur makes it very clear to think of the avatar and to think of God are one and the same. If we can fix the mind on this divine Leela, Thakur and Mahan, Swamiji, direct disciples, this will serve the same purpose. The way lies through constant practice. How do we do this? Holy company. We do this through this spending time each day with reading and meditation and all of our spiritual practices, so that the moment we leave the shrine room, that thought remains with us. That thought is always going on deep within the heart, whether consciously or unconsciously. We practice as japa. We try to remember, repeat the mantra throughout the day also. If a man practices meditation on God, he will remember God even on the last day of his life. Brahmo devotee. You have spoken very beautifully, sir. Beautiful words indeed, Master. Oh, this is just idle talk. But do you know my inner feeling? I am the machine and God is the operator. I am the house and he is the indweller. I am the engine and he is the engineer. I am the chariot and he is the charioteer. I move as he moves me. I do as he makes me do. Now, this also, I often feel how inappropriate this is for ordinary people to say, I do as God makes me. But we can take this again in that psychological sense, not the metaphysical sense. That what we're really trying to say is, I'm not going to claim credit for anything that I do. Is a way to practice humility also. Otherwise, it can be a very prideful thing. Yes, I'm an instrument in the hands of God. Very proud. We can, if we misunderstand it. For Sri Ramakrishna, there's no I to feel proud about it. It has to be a very sattvic type of I. But we can also feel that, yes, if perhaps in the very smallest possible way, that I can become an instrument to help this Leela of Sri Ramakrishna, to help somehow, what a tremendous sense of gratitude I'll feel, what a great joy and blessing it'll be. It should bring tremendous humility. So there's another way of trying to understand this. Now, we'll get to the real, Sri Ramakrishna, he had two ways of imparting spirituality. One is these incredible words, the other is his ecstasy. Presently, Trailokya began to sing to the accompaniment of drums and cymbals. Sri Ramakrishna danced, intoxicated with divine love. Many times he went into samadhi. Yeah, how do we have conviction about this samadhi? If we see it, of course, we're reading about it with great faith, but if we see it, that'll be a different thing. He stood still, his eyes fixed, his face beaming with one hand on the shoulder of a beloved disciple. Coming down a little from the state of ecstasy, he danced again like a mad elephant. Regaining consciousness of the outer world, he improvised lines to the music. O Mother, dance about thy devotees. Dance thyself and make them dance as well. O Mother, dance in the lotus of my heart. Dance, O thou, the ever-blessed Brahman. Dance in all thy world-bewitching beauty. An indescribable scene, the exquisite and celestial dance of a child completely filled with ecstatic love of God, and identified heart and soul with the Divine Mother. The Brahmo devotees danced around the master again and again, attracted like iron to a magnet. In ecstatic voices, they chanted the name of Brahman. Again, they chanted the name of the Divine Mother. Many of them wept like children, crying, "Mother, Mother." When the music was over, the devotees and the master sat down. Although it was about 8 o'clock, the evening worship of the Brahmo Samaj had not yet begun. In the joy of this divine music, they had forgotten all about their formal worship. Vijay, who was to conduct the evening service, sat facing the master. His mother-in-law and the other Brahmo ladies wanted to see Sri Ramakrishna, so the master went to meet them in another room. This was also something that he generally did, so that they would also have the blessing of his holy company. So we're stopping now at the top of page 633. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukham Hatadavikraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Everyone stay well. We will meet again next Friday.